Hey guys, apologies, we're a little bit late, fashionably late, but we're here now, we've made it, and let's see who jumps on to join us live on another session of the podcast, the Mindful Salon Jedi podcast. And today we are joined by one of my favorite humans. So Joseph Koniak, I've known for quite a few years now. So he is a brand ambassador for some of the UK's best styling products. He is a salon owner. He is a session stylist. He's worked with some of the biggest names in fashion, film, media, and he has an amazing story to tell. You're going to absolutely love it. So Joseph, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Carla. It's really such an honor and pleasure to be on one of your podcasts because you have been such an inspiration for me over the years, particularly in the salon years when I was really kind of looking and reaching out for some help and some sort of same mindset. And it was really wonderful with the Salon Jedi and the support that you and your team provided me in those days.
Those days, yes. We'll come back to Salon a little bit later, but you know, I really want you to share with everybody here today your story, because you have such an amazing story and the history behind hairdressing within your family. So I am just going to pass it over to you, Joseph, and take the floor and tell us, how did your journey begin into hairdressing? Share your story with her.
Well, my father, he was a hairdresser. He worked with Fidel Sassoon in the 1960s and was one of Fidel Sassoon's personal assistants and one of his last personal assistants, actually, before he kind of retired and moved to America and or sort of moved on to America. And he was sort of a real innovator for me. He sort of helped set up the Fidel Sassoon School in the late 60s. And then he decided to create his own concept. He was more of a naturalist type of person. He started to, I think there was a power cut once at Fidel Sassoon, and instead of just letting the clients sit there and wait for the power to come on, he started hand drying the hair, which he later called finger drying. And it was kind of a new concept of drying the hair that Fidel Sassoon, from what I understand, didn't quite understand when my father tried to explain to him, because Fidel was very much caught in the geometric world, and you know, he loved the angles, whereas my father was something that wanted something more organic and raw. And so he created his own concept of finger drying. He developed the sort of the forward graduation and created his own brand, which was called Molten Brown. And Molten Brown now, as most of us would know in the UK, is a global cosmetic company, but originally was a hair salon that some of the most iconic hairdressers of today have actually did their training and then they've kind of gone through. And so I was very lucky to be brought up in that world. When the products were originally created, they were created in the staff room, where the assistants used to mix it all up and pour it into bottles as part of their daily job, because my father and my mother, because they were together, they didn't like the idea of products that were tested on animals. They were one of the innovators behind really pushing that movement forward and not testing on animals. So if I glitch a little bit, you know why, because all the testing was done on me and my sisters. And so it was quite exciting when I hear the story, because I wasn't there in the early times. I'm sort of, I was born in 1974, and Molten Brown was created in 1971. And so I kind of joined in the business pretty much, you know, from a very early age. And, you know, it was very much a family that we didn't get pocket money. If you wanted money, you had to earn money. And being a kid, you know, you want your sweets and you want this and that. So I used to go into the salon and sweep the floor and make coffees and teas. And it was a really busy salon in South Molton Street. And, you know, you'd get everyone who was anyone would be actually going to Molton Brown at that time. And, my father was very much, in the way that he worked, everyone, no matter what background they came from, they had to be a Varderer. They had to go through the Molton Brown training. You couldn't just jump in and be on the salon floor. Even if you were an experienced 10, 20-year stylist, if you wanted to work at Molton Brown, you had to do the Vardering, and you had to pass a certain test, and you had to know how to finger dry and sort of use the Molton Browners, the bendy rollers. And there was a whole culture behind it that was, synonymous with the brand. And I used to be there and sort of sweep the hair and wash the hair. And originally growing up, I actually wanted to be a performer, a dancer, and actor. But my father said, well, actually, if you want that, that's fine. But why don't you get a profession behind you? And I thought, instead of working the tables, then, being as a waiter, well, what great idea it would be to learn to be a hairdresser. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of in my personality, I want to be the best that I can be. So I wasn't just happy being a junior. I really wanted to be a stylist so that I could be more helpful on the salon floor and take some of that pressure away from my father. And so I kind of went through the training. I wanted to jump. I wanted to skip, because Fidel Sassoon had this 9-month course. I think they had just launched these 9-month courses. Yeah. And at the time, and I thought, oh, well, I'll just do that, Dad, and I'll, then I can be more helpful. And he wasn't going to have any of it. He said, no, if you're going to learn, as far as he was concerned, he was the best. So, and I had to learn from the best in his team, who were just incredible. You had the likes of Sam McKnight, who was trained at Molton Brown, who, now, as we know now, is one of the most iconic session hairdressers we have today. Carol Hemming, who was also an artistic director, who's an Academy Award-winning film hair designer. Mm-hmm. And so we had these, like Kerry Warren as well, who, if you know the sort of film world, he sort of looked after so many iconic, film actresses over the years. And just, having that sort of pedigree of artists that have come from Molton Brown, it was, it was a real honor to learn from some of these people and the team that he had now at that time. So I did the whole assistant and junior thing. It was pretty tough because you couldn't really make much friends because they were nice, but you were always like the boss's son. And so you had to work 3 times harder than anybody else, and there's no reward for that. But I think the rewards have always got to come from within you, and I've never been someone to slack or take advantage. I'm a big believer on karma and sort of things to be balanced. So I've always, gone above and beyond. But I realized from an early age was my father loved to work in the salon. And that was his passion. I kind of got the opportunity to work with Sam when I was about sort of 17, 18 on some of the shows. And I think we were doing shows like Chloe and Vivienne Westwood and sort of Stella McCartney, and there was loads of kind of just incredible shows, Paul Smith, and I just, as a sort of 17, 18-year-old stylist, I just loved that world and that element of it. And likewise, I got to work on some Merchant Ivory films as well, and that was just another eye-opening thing for me, because all of a sudden you go from being in the salon at that time in the sort of 90s, you're kind of doing these beautiful, perfect graduated bobs, and and these everything's dried with a Denman brush. We weren't allowed, like Fidel Sassoon, we weren't allowed to use a round brush. It had to all be done the Denman way with a natural fall. And so I all of a sudden I'm in this world of fashion where there is no rules, and there's no kind of organic approach, and you just it is what it is, and I think one show I was doing for Sam, I think we were putting soap in the hair, and it was all a bit kind of crazy, and the concept was to make sure when the light hits the hair it doesn't reflect. So that was the kind of concept when they're walking down. But drying soap into somebody's hair is something the Molton Brown you wouldn't do. Yeah. And likewise, working on like Merchant Ivory films, and you're going back to the 1920s and 40s, and you're doing 18th century, and it's just you're doing a different type of hairdressing. I always believe that hair artists in the salon are hair artists. They're not really hairdressers so much anymore, because when you're in the salon, you're cutting it beautifully and you're styling it, you're finishing it off, but you're not really dressing the hair like you would have done in the 50s, and sort of 60s. Things begin to get a little bit more playful from the 70s onwards. So it was less dressing, it was more kind of organic and flow, and with the sort of 70s frizz and the flow through there. But it was really fascinating, seeing how to do finger waves and Marcel waves, and learning how to put these cages on to make these gorgeous 18th century hair pieces. And I was like a fish out of water. This was like crazy for me, because in the past with Molten Brown, you'd have to roll the hair, and I call it set and pray. So you'd set the hair and then you pray that it's going to come out and it's going to be amazing. And if you're lucky, I think I always believe that there are two types of hair artists. You do have natural hair artists, which no matter what they do, they just touch the hair and it just looks amazing. And then you try it yourself and you touch the hair and you think exactly the same way, and it just doesn't quite fall the same way. But I believe that anybody, within this industry can achieve their dream. If you don't, what you don't have maybe a natural talent, you just have to make up with lots of practice. And that's what I always felt was me. I was always very good with the clients. I always had this kind of ability to connect and relate. I was always really, really kind of good with the cutting, because that was kind of my fundamental training. So I had a lot of confidence around my haircuts. And my sort of styling in modern. But when it came to up styles, it was a lot of set and pray at the beginning. And I realized when you're going into the fashion world or the film world, you really need to be able to dress hair in a unique way. And so I recognized that at an early age. And so I kind of sought what I was needed. And at that time, I think Patrick Cameron had just come to the UK and was teaching courses in updos. And my father wasn't kind of into the idea. He appreciated that I wanted to learn, but as far as he's concerned, everything was just organic. No, you just put it here, and if it flows there, and you go with the way the hair flows. And that's great if you're a natural, and it just flows out of you. But sometimes it doesn't happen that way. And so one thing I really learned, what I loved about Patrick's method, was that it was I could relate to it in the same way that I could with a haircut. It was all step by step, and it was all sections. And my mind needs that, when I'm working. I kind of like to know the good foundation. I felt he gave a fabulous foundation for me. But at the same time, it was great for kind of quick and good and style updos. But when it came to sort of 1920s and things, it's a whole different type of styling. But I've really just, I've totally, enjoyed the journey. I think there's so much in our industry. I think we don't realize. I think when we are in a salon, I think, it's so wonderful. If you're lucky enough to love being in the salon, hang on to that, because it's such a great thing to do. You've got your lovely, your regular clientele, you've got your camaraderie with your team. You kind of, you can get to your yoga classes if you need to. And, it's like there's a balance between creativity and having a life of your own, you can work-life balance.
Talking of balance and work-life balance, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you as well, because you're busy working in films, you're doing the session styling world, and you were also a salon owner. You were creative director of a salon brand, you're ambassador of tools, and also you're an educator. How do you balance all that? And where is your time mostly focused at the moment?
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I chose to sell my salon about 2 years ago now. And I loved the journey. I mean, because Caroline, you were on that journey with me. I think one of the frustrating things when it did come to the time and it came to a point, I really believe, and I still believe, that if you have the right people in your team who adopt the right culture, you will have the freedom to do other things within the industry that you love and enjoy and still have a successful salon.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that. Where my frustrations were was that I had an incredible team that I loved dearly, but the culture and the ideas weren't always the same as mine, and I wasn't there enough to be able to implement that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think if you can do that from the beginning, this is why, it upsets me a lot in this day and age where stylists don't have trainees and assistants that want to be hairdressers. And the way that the government are sort of forcing things with the way that salons have to pay and things like that, which I know is, everyone needs good money, but at the same time, if you go to university, you're paying from your pocket through the teeth to become educated. But then for some reason, when it comes for a young person to want to be a hairdresser, a salon may not be in a position to afford for you to be an assistant in that salon because it doesn't generate enough income. Because where back in the day, you would give a stylist maybe 5% of their turnover plus a living wage, which was workable. In this day and age, it's almost impossible for anyone to survive on those kind of commissions. And any top artist is always looking out for number one often, and they're kind of looking out for themselves. So, I think one of the great things would be to have your assistants, and they are your next generation, and therefore they're learning your system, your way, your methods. And so when it does come time for you to kind of move on, just as Fidel Sassoon did, his legacy will live on forever because all of the people that work within Fidel Sassoon have been brought up with that culture from the beginning. And so it's part of who they are. And I think, this is where, for myself, I'd left the salon quite a few years before I'd sold it, in the sense I was, really loving the fashion, the film, and all of that, and the education. I was the international brand ambassador for the Diva styling tools for about 7 or 8 years. And that took me all over the world, and I would kind of do big hair shows and shoots and shows and one of the things, and it's like, you're a great example of this, Caroline, because you really, you're what I call a doer. You have your people that always kind of on, as Alan Austin Smith would always say, they live on this island called Someday I'll. Someday I will do this, and someday I'll do that. And then you have the doers, like the Caroline Saunders, and you have an idea and you follow it through. And I think it's really important to engage. If you want to fly with the eagles, you don't swim with the ducks. And I've always looked at the best in the industry and tried to emulate and follow, and then create it to become part of my own. From someone who actually started martial arts from a very young age, there was a Japanese Buddhist saying called shuhari, which is a stage of learning. Shu is when you follow and copy exactly what that person is doing. So if you see somebody successful, you don't deviate, you just follow the same system. A bit like a doctor learning the signature. First of all, it would be letter by letter. You copy. Then you have the
modeling, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think a lot of the time with this sort of instant famous, insta famous thing that is happening at the moment with a lot of people, they see things online, they want it instantly, they want to be a stylist instantly. I've had people come to my salon and they say, and I'd always do a test first. I said, you know how to cut hair? Yeah, I cut all my friends' hair. And they love it. And that was fabulous. It's great. Well, let's see your work. And they can't put a line together. They can't put precision. There's no balance. But of course, everyone is different. But I've always been, I think a lot of people take our industry for granted, and actually for the people at the top, how much work goes into becoming the artists they are. So when I was saying this, so you got the shu, you got ha, which is your next stage, which is being like when you're writing, will be when you start to join it up. So if it's Joe, it would be J-O-E. And then once you've done that, you get to the re stage is when it becomes your own. And then you just do your signature. And so everything comes from a foundation. And through learning the right way, which is to copy, don't deviate, copy from the people that you admire and want to be like. Then you make it part of you, and then you make it your own. And then this is something that is always challenging, because when I look at, artists, I've got a massive interest in salon business and business in general. I love it, the conversations that we've had, and it always used to frustrate me in many ways as a salon owner that, I'd come from these seminars and, you'd come back and you're excited and you're motivated and sit the team down and you're like, guys, this is amazing. We have this fantastic, but, at the end of the day, this is something within our culture that if you're not owning it, there tends to be not the same passion, which is so hard to fathom sometimes. So I mean, in truth, that was really the main reason why I decided to move on from owning a salon. When it came to time, I did realize that time is limited, and if whatever you do, there's a great book by Brian Tracy, I'm sure you would have read, called Eat That Frog.
Eat the Frog, yeah.
Eat the Frog. And that was a book that I've actually made my kids read as well from an early age, even though they really didn't want to. But it is a great way of kind of the beginnings of understanding time management. And, I realized that every time I was on set doing a film, if I was on designing a show, if I was teaching, there might be an issue with the salon. The backwash isn't working. So-and-so hasn't turned up for work. The accountants, you may be an issue with payroll. It's just all this energy while you're working creatively was just getting too much for me.
Yeah.
And I think if you have a great, successful salon where loads of money is coming through and the answer is just to throw money at it, then perfect. But it wasn't that way with me and the situation and the team. And where I'm very proud and hold my head high to say we did have a very successful salon. The turnover was great, but my standards were greater. I wanted the best chairs. I wanted the best backwashers. I wanted the best climate zones. I wanted the best cutlery for the teas and coffees. And so anytime
perfection is Joseph's tagline, if you like. Passion for
perfection. I really wanted the journey to be special, because at the end of the day, people are, when they're coming to see you, they're buying not just the service, but the feeling you give them.
And it's difficult to balance that, like you say, if you like exactly what you said, if the culture isn't strong in place, that there's been enough time that has been so consistent that you are free to then go and follow other passions like your session styling, etc. It's you're like you said, you're being pulled from pillar to pillar. Let me take you back to the session styling again, because I know a lot of people listening. We're getting some comments here. Heather saying, I'm loving this. Jackie, me too. He's so genuine. So they're loving it. Okay. So let's go back to session. And now you came into it through your family. So what about somebody who is not in that world, who has never been in that world, but wants to tap into that world? If they're interested in that, what are some tips that you would give them to get their foot in the door and start getting some experience?
I think one of the things I would say to anybody, you only fail in life when you give up trying. And a lot of the times we kind of go for something, we see something and we don't get it the first, second or third time. We tend to think it's not for us or it's not working out. It very much follows the same rule in that you find somebody that you feel connects with your work. Don't go for something that isn't. If you are a big fan of Sam McKnight, you want to get in touch with Sam, let's say, for example, who does the most incredible work all over the world and still does. And he's, he celebrated his 60th many years ago now. and he's still way more current than most young hairdressers, which I love. And I recently, through none of my own contacts, one of my old trainees, my assistants, reached out, and I found out the other day she was working backstage on his fashion show. And it just begins like that. It's kind of who you know. But getting your foot through the door is perseverance. It's also creating an identity for yourself. Make sure that the work, we've got such great platforms now. And I think you're such a good advocate of that. And anyone watching this, if they're not, in tune with your world, it would be a good start to understand the mindset of success, because it's very much within the mind to move forward. You're great. So, anyone that's watching is part of your world, but they would know that you've really gone out of your way to understand and master marketing. And along with all the other knowledge. And this is key in this day and age. Before, when I was younger and trying to get through the door, I would have to have a portfolio that I used to go around to different agencies with and open them up. And but next month it was all old stuff. And then you have to update it. So in this day and age where you've got Instagram, you've got Facebook, you've got, ability to have your own platform and website, these are all the things that are going to help add value to who you are if you are starting out. If anybody was, I've got a job now. I've got to find a couple of hairdressers to go to Barbados for a fashion show. Yeah. and there's people, I can't go because I've got different work, but I'm designing the show for it. But what I would want, if anybody's sort of reaching out, and anybody watching here are reaching out and say, I'd like to go, I would need to straight away, I'd need to look at your portfolio. I need to know the references, especially a job like that, because it's, you're going under somebody's umbrella, to know that you have the ability to, work as a team. And then all of that can be shown through Instagram or through your website. You can have videos. And if you haven't done that, success happens. I really believe success happens when preparation meets with an opportunity. So if you're not get where you want, just keep preparing. I'm at home here. I built a studio in my house. And so when I'm not working, I will kind of get my training head out and I'll be practicing different hairdos. I've kind of signed up. I've got about 50 Udemy courses I'm still yet to get through, just to keep the mind going. And, if you just do the key thing, the key is keep educating yourself. When it comes to getting into the session world and you want to do it, you just reach out. Failure is not an option. You cannot let failure be an option. You will get, there will be moments where someone doesn't get back to you. I am guilty of that as well. And please, if you've ever reached out to me and I haven't got back to you, it's honestly what happens is, and I apologize here and now, is that I lose the trail. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got to get back to this person. And I can't find it. I don't know whether they've Facebooked me, Instagrammed me, texted me, emailed me. It gets lost because there's so many different funnels that people try and reach out to you. But I would just say, never give up. Don't give up. Follow the people that you love. Look in the magazines, see who the editors are, show them your work, email them, tell them how amazing they are, how brilliant they are. Everybody loves their ego kind of buffed up a little bit. It's human nature. You can't fight that. We may all want to be these supreme human beings where, there's benevolent people, but at the end of the day, if we stop breathing, we die. That is just a human part of who we are. And also, image is very, very important. How you present yourself. Because, if you're presenting yourself and you're getting the wrong impression from others, you need to address that. Be really open to feedback. Feedback is really the breakfast of champions. And I would just say, check yourself. Ask your friends to tell you what they really think about you, and be truthful, and not just your best friends. Because, I've had issues on set where I'm a little bit keen. I'm a bit of a hair geek. admittedly. And sometimes I realize on set that can come across as people think that I might be fake. And I didn't realize this until, you know, I heard from a friend that, you know, that was what somebody had said. And it kind of hurt me because it just really wasn't my intention. I'm just really keen. I get very excited.
Yeah.
But I realized actually that was something that I didn't mind about myself.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, I'm okay with some people, you know. And my son said this quite interestingly, because I've always been somebody, there's an amazing coach that used to work with me, Michaela Martin from Schwarzkopf, when she was a representative of Schwarzkopf, and she's now the owner of Spirit Salon. And she's won numerous awards, but I used to love working with Michaela because she, very much like you, Caroline, she was kind of just someone who's excited and really makes you believe that your dreams can come true and will show you the path if you're willing to get there, you know. And she kind of co-wrote this book and about kind of how different people are different types of animals. You know, you could be the monkey, which is cheeky, and then you could be the elephant, which is kind of cautious, and then you could be the dolphin, which is really sweet, and then the lion, which is, you know, a powerhouse. Well, I was very much a kind of dolphin. I like people to like me, which is a great, you know, it's not always great, because one thing my son said to me, and he's 17, which I really loved the other day, he goes, Dad, you know, I realize not everybody likes me. And all of a sudden the dolphin in me going, oh no, I'm so sorry. Okay, I love you. But then he turned around and goes, you know, but I realized not everybody matters.
Ah, yeah.
Like, what? Yeah, you're right.
You know, yeah. I'd say I definitely agree with that, in the sense of, I think you need to be open to learning, and you have to be open to growing and open to listening and growing better. But at the same time, if somebody's just judging you for the sake of judging you, which isn't something to learn from, then we need to learn to let that go and not take that personally to heart, because they're just judging from their perspective.
Yes.
And it's not serving you at all. It's, you know, but if it's something that, like you say, constructive criticism to grow and develop, you know, there's always a lesson in it, and we have to learn to not take that so personally. I love that your son is so mature that he has come out with that. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm just going to quickly say, so before we wrap up, has anyone got any questions? Type it in the chat, and we'll maybe have time for a question or two. But Joseph, I know that you've been up at my salon delivering training with my team. I mean, you are just a master craftsman at what you do. I mean, when you left, what you left my team with, the skills, and it was for a day, and the skills that you left my team with were phenomenal. It's, you know, one of those that made such an impact in their creativity that we went on to use some of the things in art shoots, and, you know, it was so phenomenal. Are you still doing, obviously with lockdown, etc., have you still been doing education? How can people train from you at the moment? Are you doing digital education? What have you got coming up?
It's interesting. The last couple of years since selling the salon, I've started to co-create a new tool brand called Revamp, and which is sort of in its sort of second year. So anybody that's wanting great tools, you know, do check it out, because the idea is very much wanting to create, you know, that's kind of a world that I've been into and really want to evolve a tool line. And it's interesting when it comes to educate. I kind of been spending the whole year educating myself in some ways. With the lockdown, I've kind of just got immersed in actually wanting to learn more and sort of tuning into all the different programs. I will begin to go back and do some education, and but at the moment, I think just with everything that's going on, if I'm going to be completely honest, I'm really happy if anybody wants to reach out to me and does want to do some workshops. But I realized I'm working on a film at the moment. I'm getting up at like 3 a.m. and then I'm not getting to sleep till sort of crawling back into bed about 10, and then I've got to wake up again at 3 a.m. So it's just sort of, you kind of, you're in a bit of a daze when it comes to those times. And I'm sort of want to sort of see the year out on a sort of positive. I've sort of renovated my house, and so I think in terms of the education that I will do, I will begin again, but most likely it will be next year. And I'm really open. I'm the reason why I built this home studio, actually, I don't know if you guys can see it. So I've kind of built, like, I've got a little backwash there.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of through here, and it's like a little styling station here, and then back here as well. If you look on the ceiling, I've got like a little thing here I can pull down.
Oh, yeah.
So when we're doing like lives, or so I might begin to do sort of more, what do you call it, webinars.
Yes, like the digital training.
Yeah, so I'm looking at kind of creating more digital education, and then, you know, having this home studio for doing more one-to-ones. And then, you know, when it comes to the big workshops, then, you know, I'll probably, it's always challenging when you're putting workshops on yourself, because, as you know, when with your workshops, what happens is you got to do the posters, you got to do the marketing, you got to do the reach out. It's a whole business on its own.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, where you put your focus is where you get your results. And at the moment, you know, with all the film work that I'm doing and the tool line, that's sort of where I want to put my personal focus on. But if anybody does want to reach out and do some masterclasses and workshops with me, then I'm totally open for that.
Yeah, I've got Heather here that's saying that she would love to do a day's training. And Heather, I definitely recommend that you contact Joseph, just knowing the kind of work that you do as well, Heather, and knowing Joseph's work. I definitely feel that you should reach out to Joseph. I think, you know, he's just phenomenal teacher at what you do. Well, Joseph, I could speak to you all day long. I love all your stories.
It's been so nice.
I just love having you here. Let me just leave it with, just share, what's one of the biggest lessons that you have learned that you can leave people with over your whole career up until now? What's one of the biggest lessons that you could share with everybody? Some positive, we all need some positive uplifting stuff right now.
I probably would have said it all the way through, but it's definitely, success happens when preparation meets with opportunity. You only fail in life when you give up trying.
Well, thank you so much, Joseph. Everybody's loved it. And as per usual, I have loved it too. We'll speak soon. And thanks everyone for joining. Take care. Thanks, Joseph.
Thank you.